Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the Mythic Plus dungeons that are going to be in Season 1 of Dragonflight. Earlier this week we got the announcement or reveal or finding of what the final two dungeons would be in the Season 1 dungeon pool, and those were Temple of the Jade Serpent and Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. There's been a lot of hints of Temple of the Jade Serpent already, but the other one being... Oh no, it was Halls of Valor. We already knew Temple of Jade Serpent. Halls of Valor and Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. I was going to say, I thought we already knew Temple. So they just have these in a bit of a weird order here. So we have the 4 Dragonflight dungeons that we knew, and then we have 4 older dungeons that we do. And I'm going to talk about them and why I think some of them are in and stuff like that, how I think they fit or don't fit, and etc. So I guess if I read this here, it says Halls of Valor and Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. So first up, we have Ruby Life Pools. This is one of the new dungeons. It's like a lower level dungeon that you could do when you're leveling up. This is actually a really simple dungeon. A lot of them are actually kind of simple. This is a very simple dungeon. I don't think anybody will really hate this one by any means. It's just going to be like your typical low timer kind of key. And I think most people will be fine with it. It's a new dungeon, at least for Season 1. In Season 2, we won't have it. So I think overall it'll be accepted pretty well as far as that goes. I have a caveat here on Algathar Academy. This dungeon's actually bugged on the beta right now. I haven't been able to test this one out yet. It actually ports you. You're actually technically in the Dragon Isles when you start the dungeon or whatever. When you zone in, you're in the Dragon Isles and not in technically the zone instance or whatever. You are, but you aren't. And anyways, but it flags you as out of bounds and it teleports you out, and it's just kind of broken. You can get around it, but it's really hard to get your whole group around it. I almost, was able to sneak past it once myself, but getting your entire group to do it on especially a pug, is about impossible. So I do have a caveat that I do not know this one. I do not know this dungeon from firsthand experience. I've heard decent things about it. I've heard some people actually like it. Some people I know said it's their favorite one. So I have no personal opinions though. The Nokud Offensive Dungeon. So this dungeon is if you've heard about there being dragon riding in a dungeon, this is that one. So it's not like a massive one. So when I heard that out, I was a little bit skeptical. Dragon riding through the dungeon. Okay, it's not really that much. You're just basically dragon riding from area to area. They're not platforms. It's actually a big, sprawling, beautiful dungeon. But you're not like going, you're not like flying through doing obstacles or anything like that. You're basically just going from area to area. So you go to one boss area, then when you finish, you go to the second boss area, then you go to the third boss area or whatever. It's very, very simple like that. You could probably choose which areas you go to in what order or whatever. But basically there's going to be trash there. You first do the trash event, and then you fight the bosses. It's one of the better looking dungeons for sure. I think most people will be fine with that. It uses dragon riding, but not really in a way that like totally affects you or could like hurt you, hopefully. So I was a little skeptical, thinking that people might be like, I don't want to dragon ride in my Mythic Plus dungeon. But it is literally just like, instead of taking a teleport, you just have to do it yourself on your dragon riding mount. That's about the only difference. Azure Vault, speaking of teleports, Azure Vault has a lot of teleports. So this one has a bit of RP in it. A lot of Mythic Plusers specifically do not like RP stuff. It's not too troublesome as far as like having to wait for NPCs, but you do have NPC talking to you, guiding you through the dungeon, and then you have to use these books to teleport around. It's kind of like the Oculus in a way, especially the way it's built. But instead of flying a dragon to go up levels, use these teleporter things to do it instead. It's not teleport because it's not instant, right? You are flying. You like turn into like a book and like fly up to the next level, but it does it for you. You're not manually driving it. So I think this one's fine though. What's interesting about Azure Vault is that it has a lot of optionality as far as what you want to pull trash wise. You could go left, you can go right, you can skip stuff when you're on the circles that I was mentioning. If you're in the rooms, you could like pull the side, you could pull the middle, you could skip the middle. So it does have a lot of choices in what you could pull. I know a lot of Mythic Plus people like that. So Azure Vault could be a good one. I really like the last boss in Azure Vault. So this one could be one that's liked. I don't see any of these being a huge issue, except for I don't know about the Academy. I just know that some of my friends said that they liked it. So I don't see any of these being huge issues as far as like being super hated, unless people don't like the Azure Vault and having to fly with the books and stuff like that. It's not complicated though. It's not like a maze or anything challenging you mentally. It's just maybe some people don't like that. Court of Stars is an interesting one. This is out of the 8 dungeons, the one that I've seen the most pushback on. Why are we getting Court of Stars again? I think there's actually a really obvious answer here that people don't really think about, and a lot of people don't care about. I realize as well, especially in like these end game communities, don't care about it as much. But I believe Court of Stars is in it because of the like profession stuff that you can do in Court of Stars, right? This whole expansion is about revamping professions and professions being an end game system now, essentially, right? Like you can make end game loot with professions now. And Court of Stars uses professions in the dungeon, in a at least what used to be a unique way. We kind of do that with Covenants as well in Shadowlands. But Court of Stars uses professions to give you buffs and stuff like that. I think that's why they chose it, and it's more of fitting thematically. So how do we get these dungeons to fit thematically? And I think Court of Stars is in there for that reason. Now, not all of these are probably going to make sense thematically. I think that this doesn't make sense thematically as far as storyline, most likely. Maybe it does. Maybe there's some sort of, elven thing with Court of Stars that fits into it. But that's not necessarily the point. I think it's just the profession thing. It's a dungeon that's pretty figured out. We've already done it, revamped it with the Legion time walking and stuff like that. So it'll just be in the main set now that there isn't going to be like the Legion time walking anymore. It'll just be in the set for season 1, and some people don't like it. I totally understand it. It's not my favorite dungeon either, and it probably will be the most disliked one out of these 8 would be my guess. And yeah, it is most likely because of the profession thing would be my guess. Halls of Valor, so this is one of the new ones that was released. Knowledge was released on it. So Halls of Valor, this was a Legion Mythic Plus dungeon, and I actually had no problem with this one. I guess it was very, very, very hard in high keys, but I did nothing even close to a high key in Legion. I just did whatever the max was for my box or whatever, whatever max I had to do for gear, whatever I had to do. I know I had to farm Horn of Valor, I believe, from Halls of Valor back in Legion. And so I just would do, whatever would give me the max item level, and that's what I would do. And in those keys, I had no issue with it whatsoever. This is one that I probably did, the most, maybe outside of Maw of Souls, and I had no issue with Halls of Valor personally. But I guess on higher keys, it was really, really difficult, a lot of one-shots. So there is tuning to be done, but I actually like this dungeon a lot. And if they do the tuning, I've seen a lot of like high-end people say, if they just go into this like right now and not wait till it starts, but go into this with the nerf hammer that they took to lower Karazhan in season 4 of Shadowlands, then Halls of Valor will probably be fine, and it'll probably be quite fun because it is a fun dungeon. It just, I guess, was quite hard as it scaled up would be the only issue there. I do think, as far as how this dungeon fits in, I do think Halls of Valor could fit in a way. So we are dealing with the dragons in obviously Dragonflight, and they mentioned Titan magic a lot and the Titans a lot and stuff like that. And I think really our ambassador to the Titans in a lot of ways many times is Odin. We dealt with Odin in Shadowlands even. And so Halls of Valor could tie into the storyline of just having to tie up some loose ends with Odin, figure out what's going wrong from Odin. Maybe he knows something about the dragons that the Titans told him or whatever. But yeah, Odin could play a role. I would say that. I'm not saying, I wouldn't say it's like a super high chance, but I'd say it's like a 50% chance or something that Odin could play a role in the storyline, and then that would make a lot of sense thematically. Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, I couldn't think of anything thematically that would make this one fit. This was a dungeon from Warlords, so I did it a lot, but I never did it on like challenge mode or anything like that. It's a pretty solid dungeon overall. A lot of the Warlords dungeons were liked, I would say, and this one was mostly liked as well. It was one of my least favorite ones. For some reason, I just don't like dungeons with a lot of casters in them. At least I didn't back in the day. I don't really mind as much now, but when I was more of a casual player, I just thought it was annoying, I guess, and like tanks would get killed by the cast and stuff like that because no one would ever interrupt other than me. But I was just in really casual groups and stuff like that. So Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, Again, this is from Warlords, so it's like the alternate timeline. I don't know how that would ever fit into any kind of storyline or anything like that. I think they just chose this one because they thought it would be, a good one to tune, and that people would like to do this one. And that's kind of what I feel the same way on Temple of the Jade Serpent here, the last one. Temple of Jade Serpent, that's from Mists of Pandaria. It's one of the beginning dungeons there. It's very linear dungeon. Typically you go left, you go right, you snake around to the final room, and then you go straight through. And it's like a very simple, straightforward dungeon. And yeah, I don't see them having many issues tuning this one at all or anything like that. It's just extremely linear and extremely, Halls of Valor is pretty linear as well. A little bit of optionality in Fenrir's room. We have Court of Stars, some options. A lot. Azure Vault, some options, and then a lot of these are pretty linear, which I'm not against that. I know some people hate that. I actually am in favor of it because I think there's a lot of there's like a barricade almost. There's like a locked door on Mythic Plus for tanks who want to get started because they have to come up with a route and stuff like that. And having a route when you play a lot and are doing high end stuff is not that big of a thing to be expected. But when you're first starting out, you might be nervous to go into your first +3 or something like that, and you have to have a route. I think it could be a bit daunting. So when things are a little bit linear, I think that lowers the barrier of entry in, and it helps out at the lower end of things. It doesn't do anything for the high end really that much. Some people wish it wouldn't be that linear. But I do think it's overall better if it gets more people to play. If it doesn't, then it is what it is. But I think having more dungeons be linear. I know for me, I just think back to myself, right? Warlords of Draenor, I mentioned I played really, really casually there. If I were to do a challenge mode dungeon back then, I did tank a lot back then. And let's say I tanked the challenge mode dungeon. If I had to come up with a route for it as well, I probably wouldn't even step inside it, honestly. So I can say that for myself 100%. But yeah, I'm overall pretty optimistic about it. I think, Court of Stars will be like, another Court of Stars key, I don't want to do it, or something like that. At the same time, we kind of know it very well. Anybody who does Legion time walking has it down probably pretty well. And other than that, we have, 3 ones that we haven't seen, or Halls of Valor we have seen, but we haven't seen in a while. It'll probably be tuned differently. We have 3 dungeons that will be, very fresh. We have 4 dungeons that'll be completely fresh. And I think that these are a solid set of dungeons here. I think Uldaman might be the most controversial one just because it is a bit of a long dungeon. So we'll see on that. But that won't be till season 2, apparently. So we don't have to worry about it now. Halls of Valor has a very long timer as well. It is a fairly long dungeon. It's a lot of running, right? So that is a fairly long one as well. But they balance that out well with some really, really short ones to go along with it. So I'm overall optimistic about this. I think, like most things, it's going to come down to tuning. I think the most questionable choice is Court of Stars, just because we've had it so much already. Maybe a different Mists of Pandaria dungeon in there or something would be better. Who knows on that? But that's probably my only criticism is another Court of Stars in there. Other than that, I think it'll be pretty fun. I like the idea of doing the 4 with the 4 old ones. If it's, the reality is that they don't have enough time to design 16 dungeons or whatever. And since they don't, this is probably like the next best thing of revamping some old dungeons. And, it's not that they don't have time necessarily to like balance them. It's like to actually design them, right? Design the zone, design the mobs, design the NPCs, everything you see around you, all the assets, everything like that. It's a lot of work to build these dungeons. And, they just, they were working with around 100 devs. They just hired more to do all this. And they just don't have time to do 16 dungeons. I would hope that maybe someday they could. They did hire more devs and stuff. That would be awesome. Or 12 dungeons or something like that. But yeah, as far as where we are right now, it's probably the best we're going to get. So I am pretty happy with it. And I do like the idea. I don't like the idea of, some people are saying, give us all 8 at the beginning, and then 4 next with 4 old, and then 4 with 4 old on the 3rd patch and stuff like that. I kind of like this. I like going fresh. I just do. As someone who gets bored very easily in Mythic Plus, I kind of like going fresh. That's just my thoughts, though. That's it for this one, guys. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.